What if I told you that Mel might be the best way to go infinite in Riftbound? Yeah, it's a pretty big claim. That's a pretty big claim. That's fucking wild. But it might be true because there is a blue purple infinite combo that I'm going to show the guide, the steps of what the combo is to generate infinite power and infinite energy. And I am going to show you three different win conditions with all of that energy, with all that power. One of which is very expected, but two of them are pretty interesting. So buckle up. And we'll also, at the very end, talk about why Mel specifically is probably going to be the right legend to play for this infinite combo. All right. Welcome to the blue purple infinite combo walkthrough. Now, it is important to note that there are many different kinds of ways to get into this infinite. I have a spreadsheet with a couple of options. The option that I'm going to show you right now is what I think is the easiest to explain to an opponent. It is a single loop that nets you both positive energy and power, so you don't have to do a double loop like you do with Lux. It does require lots of little pieces, but I think it is the simplest. If you find a different version that you prefer using, rock and roll. Go for it. But without further ado, the things that you need in place, you need 12 runes, and you need an empty deck. On your field, you're going to want an empowered applied researchers, a garbage grabber, a Heimerdinger. On the Heimerdinger, you want to equip an experimental hex plate, which will turn Heimerdinger into a mech. And you want Malzahar. In your trash, this is important, you want a Progress Day, a Bubble Bot, and a Fizz. And then in your hands, you will have an Echo, a Heedless Resurrection, a Lunar Boon, a Bubble Bot, a Retreat, and a Progress Day. Yeah, that's what you need to have this sort of loop actually going. You might think to yourself, well, this is impossible as a board state. You have many ways in these colors to recycle things ahead of time, prepare yourself, and so it's not, I don't believe it is actually that difficult to get into this scenario. So, starting it off, you are going to pay just 5 and recycling a blue for Echo. From here, you are going to, for 1, because Researcher reduces the cost of all your spells by 1 in a power, I'm going to play Heedless Resurrection for 1. Now, Heedless Resurrection has an additional cost to play this of killing a friendly unit. So, even if your opponent had a Defy or some way to interact with this, it would be annoying for other reasons, but Echo will still die. And so Echo is going to die. I'm going to float 6 energy, because that's what I've got left to tap of my runes, and then untap the rest. And now we're going to resolve the rest of Heedless Resurrection. So play a unit from your trash that costs no more energy and no more power than the killed unit. I'm going to target Fizz. Fizz is going to come in, and you can play that for free also. Fizz is going to come in, and I'm actually going to target the same Heedless Resurrection I used to kill Echo. So I'm going to play the Heedless Resurrection. I'm going to target Fizz with that, killing Fizz, and that will recycle Heedless Resurrection. And then with that, I will play instead Bubblebot this time. And now, importantly, you can play the Heedless Resurrection without paying its cost because of Applied Researchers, once again, on the power. Bubblebot is going to come in, and when it comes in, it says, when you play me, you may ready another friendly mech. So this is why Heimerdinger needs to be a mech. We'll ready Heimerdinger, and then we're going to use Heimerdinger's effect to tap him and copy Malzahar's tap ability, which says, kill a friendly unit, add 2 power. I'm going to kill the Bubblebot, adding 2 power. Okay. From here, we are going to pay 2 instead of 3 for Lunar Boon. I will discard a Bubblebot to resolve the spell and draw 2. I will now pay 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 for Echo and 1 power that I had floating. I will pay 1 more with a Heedless Resurrection targeting Echo. At this point, I'm going to float 3, 6, 9. So I'm going to float 9 energy before the Echo dies. And then we're going to do the same thing that we did last time of Heedless, targeting Fizz, targeting Heedless, targeting Bubblebot. So This is going to get recycled. Fizz is going to come out, target the Heedless, and Bubblebot's going to come out. You remember the drill. You know the drill. Bubblebot's going to come out. We're going to ready Heimerdinger again. Now this time we're going to do something slightly different. We are going to use one of those floating energy to play Retreat on Bubblebot, to put it back into our hands, and channel this one exhausted rune. From here, we are going to tap Heimerdinger, paying another 1 to copy Garbage Grabber's ability of recycling 3 cards and then drawing 1. We're going to recycle Retreat, Lunar Boon, and Progress Day. Shuffle those up, recycle them, draw 1 card. And then we're going to pay 5 for Progress Day and draw these 4 cards. Progress Day is reduced by 1 in a power again because of the Applied Researcher. And we are at the end of the infinite power and infinite energy loop. As you can see, we have netted ourselves 2 energy and 1 power at the end. We did recover that rune. You will always go up on power and energy at the end of this loop. You can demonstrate that to your opponent. Hopefully your opponent accepts the situation, and you can just say, now I have infinite energy and infinite power. Yeah. And now we're going to get into the 3 different ways that I think are the most interesting in ascending order, least interesting to most, to just win the game on the spot with this combo. So I'm taking away the phone here because we have infinite energy and infinite power. The most boring way to win the game sort of on the spot, but probably the least interactive way, is playing Ranata. If you would like, you could play the Ranata to your base and then do combinations of retreats and echoes and Heedless Resurrections to basically run the same combo with Bubblebot, except you are going to copy the Ranata ability to score points. You sort of loop that until you have scored 8 points, or however many points you need to win the game. The second combo that I think is very interesting is actually if you play a combination of a few different cards. I actually think first you have infinite energy and infinite power. I think that you play Downwell here. If you play Downwell, you're going to pick up everything. Your opponent's going to pick up everything. There is absolutely nothing at a battlefield now. Yeah, you get this all back in your hand. Good news for you, though, you have infinite everything. So you just replay that Researcher. You replay, you replay the Researcher to start, and then you empower it because it's just too good. And then you're going to play Swain. Now, Swain, if you don't know, has When I Conquer, if you've played a non-token unit, a non-token gear, and a spell this turn, you score a point. Importantly, if you play Swain, make sure you have something in your deck because it does have vision. It will need to look at the top card of your deck. If you don't have anything there, you will burn out, and it will be sad. So, just if you do this version, which is medium fun, just make sure you have something there. But you're going to play Swain. And then you are going to actually play the Experimental Hexplate and equip it to Swain. So now you have played, if you play Swain, play the Experimental Hexplate, you've played a billion spells, right? Swain can now ready if you play something like Bubblebot. You're going to ready Swain, you're going to move it into a battlefield, score 2 points. Then you are going to play Ride the Wind on Swain. You're going to move Swain to the other battlefield. Score 2 more points. So now you're at 4, huh? That's pretty cool. A nice finish to that would be something like Time Warp. You're going to take an extra turn. You're going to take that extra turn. Actually, no, before you do that, you need to move Swain back to your base. I remembered something there. Then you take an extra turn. Cool, fine. You've taken an extra turn. You're going to ready Swain again. And at this point, you play your Garbage Grabber as a gear. You play Echo as a unit, and you play, it doesn't really matter, Retreat on the Bubblebot. Like I said, it genuinely doesn't matter. You've played all 3 of the things that you need. And you go in here, score 2 more points, and then you're just going to Heedless Resurrection the Echo, targeting a Fizz, to play that Ride the Wind to ride the wind over for 8. So it's a single time warp that gets you into 8 points with Swain. So that is the sort of more fun, and you give your opponent a chance if they have action speed spells to interact. All right, so we are going to do the more interesting infinite, I think. And this one is going to win you the game with infinite burnout. Now, if you're not familiar with what burnout is in Riftbound, whenever a player goes to look at or draw a card from their deck and there is nothing there, that player shuffles their trash, replaces their deck with those cards in their trash, and then they give their opponent a point. So if you can infinitely burn somebody out, they effectively have to give you infinite points. So you'll win the game off of that. The downside of this combo is it is not deterministic, meaning because your opponent and you are constantly changing what's in your hand, in theory, somebody could have responses. I think that this combo is best utilized when your opponent has limited runes available and or is in a color that doesn't really have a way to interact with you from your base or whatever. So that's the only downside of this, is it's a little more interactable because you're giving your opponent more options. But in order to pull this one off, we're going to want to bubble bot out. We're going to play Last Rites. Now, Last Rites has an equip ability for 1 power, but remember, we have infinite energy and power. You're going to equip it to the bubble bot, and when you equip it, in order to equip it, you have to pay a cost. The cost to equip is to recycle 2 cards. The 2 cards that we are going to recycle are going to be 2 cards that we do not care about. So for the sake of this, I'm going to recycle Retreat and Mel. Doesn't really matter. We'll recycle those 2. Check. Then we are going to play Heedless Resurrection. We are going to play Heedless Resurrection, targeting this bubble bot to kill the bubble bot. Then we will bring out a bubble bot to restand Heimerdinger. Cool, great, lovely. We are then going to tap Heimerdinger to copy Garbage Grabber to recycle 3 cards and then draw 1. Now we are going to recycle a Heedless Resurrection that we played, and invert timelines. And if you're playing Mel, I would recommend recycling a rebuttal. So we'll recycle these 3. Don't worry about the fact that one of them's in a different sleeve. I just grabbed it from the other deck. Recycle these 3. And as part of this Garbage Grabber, you have to draw a card. So that's the reason that we recycled 2 cards we don't care about, because you'll see in a second, we'll draw, and then we are going to finish everything off by playing an invert timeline. So both players with invert timelines discard their hands and draw 4. So we discard one of those 2 random cards we got back with Last Rites, and we're going to draw 4. 3, 4. Now the benefit here is if you do this combo correctly, you will never deck out, because you are putting 5 cards back in, and between Garbage Grabber and Invert Timelines, drawing 5 cards. Your opponent, however, will eventually run out of cards and then burn themselves out. So you just do the same thing again, right? You do the same loop. You equip the Last Rites to a bubble bot. You recycle Mel and one other card that doesn't matter. Echo. Doesn't particularly matter. And then you are going to Heedless Resurrection, the bubble bot, playing a bubble bot. I'm just doing it again also so that I know, because this is the more complicated one. Ready, Heimerdinger. Tap Heimerdinger with Garbage Grabber. We got to put back in Heedless, Invert, and I don't know, Lunar Boon. It really doesn't matter. If you have 2 copies or more of Rebuttal in your trash at this point, because after the first one you would always pick a second copy of Rebuttal. So that way when you play your inverts or whatever, you always have an option to play a Rebuttal if your opponent draws it into a Defy or something. But for the sake of a demonstration, it's just a random card, but normally it's a second Rebuttal. You draw a card, it's a random card that doesn't matter. You invert timelines, discard, draw 4. If you have set everything up correctly, and if you are playing multiple copies of Rebuttal, and there's always one between your trash and your hand, you should always have a response in case your opponent draws something like a counterspell. You can counter that. There's always the off chance that if your opponent has tons of resources available to them at the start of your turn, you probably don't want to do this combo because they're going to draw so many cards. The odds that they find their outs are much higher. But if they're down to like 1, 2 open runes, I think normally it's going to be fine. You'll eventually burn them out. You will get to 8 points because they will just burn out infinitely. So those are the variety of combos that exist in blue-purple and also how to win off of them. Now, there are a few cards that I think are just really important in making this in blue-purple particularly powerful. Obviously, the cards that I've shown that make the combo work, like Heedless Resurrection, is just nuts. We basically have Sacrifice in purple. But outside of that, there are a few other cards that I think make this much more viable. And those cards are, I'll start with the most generic. I think Downwell is a very, very strong card. Downwell says return all units and gear to their owner's hands. So basically, you're bouncing everything, including your own stuff, to their hands. But what that usually means is that your opponent has to spend multiple turns getting things back on the field. And if you have infinite energy and power, you will always win that race. So I think Downwell's a very strong card. It's akin to Ruination, whereas before we had to play cards like Unchecked Power. Second card that I think is really important for this, and maybe why you play Mel's, because you can play it in the Champion Zone, is the Mel Newly Awakened, the blue Mel. So obviously when you play it, draw 1, so it's a draw card, but it has Empower 3. Your spells and abilities can't be countered. The rest of it in Mel, it matters sometimes, but really for this combo it doesn't matter. The spells and abilities can't be countered is huge. Once you get that out on your combo turn or right before it or whatever, your opponent is completely locked out of a bunch of their ways of interacting with the cards that you're going to cast. So also, I think really big for blue-purple. The last card, and the reason why I think if you're going to try to run this, the most powerful way to do it is Mel, is Rebuttal. You have your own counterspell. Lux does not have a counterspell. None of the other blue blank infinites have counterspell except blue-green infinites, which are not great, to be honest. So of all the infinites, there is one that has a counterspell, and that counterspell can be shuffled back into the deck, as I demonstrated. It's just nuts. So these 3 cards, and Rebuttal especially, is why I think this is actually viable. Invert Timelines, I'll also point out, give an honorable mention. Each player discards and then draws 4. It's effectively another progress day that you have access to. And it's a progress day that with an empowered researcher costs 2. And yes, you're going to discard your hand, but you have Garbage Grabber. You have Last Rites. You have ways to get those important cards back into your deck so that you can get into those combo turns. Your opponent is going to plan out their whole turn, discard their whole hand, and draw a random 4. 2 draw 4 cards is something that all of the infinite decks would love to have access to, but only one color combo does. So I think those 2 things make this a much more reliable infinite relative to everything else when you compare it to Lux. Like, Lux is still very good, but blue-purple does have the tools available to it to compete if somebody can make the right deck list. Now let's have a little section for my thoughts. As I said at the very beginning, I do think this has the potential to be very strong. The various win conditions and how you build the deck is, I think, open to a lot of interpretation. I do believe that there will be some people in Barcelona who will play some version of this. I have heard rumblings. I will say no more. But there are enough pieces here to get you into the combo pretty quickly. And frankly, Heedless Resurrection, Fizz, and all the myriad spells that you have access to, I think make this combo particularly insane. Because Heedless Resurrection is a reaction spell. So on your opponent's turn, if your opponent opens any sort of window, you could theoretically invert timelines them on their turn. If you Heedless Resurrection a Fizz, into an invert timelines. So it's not like you even have to wait to draw on your turn. You can force your opponent to discard, draw 4 while you draw 4, using extra energy and power, and it's nuts. Whether or not this ultimately ends up being good will depend on the overall meta, what people tech for, tech against. But I think that this is really interesting. I think Mel in particular is crazy, not because the legend itself does anything, but because the signature spell is crazy. And I'm excited to see how people experiment with this, because blue purple was the one infinite that I really wanted to see what it looked like, because it has a lot of tools. Apologies if you just hate infinites. Like, I've just made these videos because, like, I don't know. It's interesting to me. I don't actually play these decks at my locals. I don't actually recommend playing these decks at locals for the most part, because they think they are not particularly fun to play or play against. It's a nice experiment for me, mind experiment, thought experiments. Um, but some version of this I think we'll see play way more than a lot of the other infinites that I covered. Whether it's as good as Lux, we will see. But thank you for watching. Subscribe if you like this. I'm going to be streaming. Maybe I will stream this deck, some Mel deck, after you watch this on the Saturday, if you want to see it. So let me know, and I will catch you in a future video.